And another thing, Rebecca. Oh, wait a second.
We're on the air.
We're on the air. Hello, Mina-san, konbanwa. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. Rebecca and I have been getting into it a bit before the show. I'm sure we'll be getting into it a bit before the show is over. But right now, let's call it truce. Okay, Rebecca, we got to get to some stories here. Okay. Rebecca Biblioteca is joining us, obviously. So is Bill Reel. How are you, Bill?
I'm doing excellent. Glad to be here. What a great night this is going to be. Great stories, by the way, I think all throughout. So I'm excited.
And Rebecca, how are you?
Not too bad. Not too shabby.
Okay, well, good. Well, let's check out the stories. There's the thumbnail right there. Mormon Stories versus Mormon Church. That's going to be, I believe, the lead story, the top story. Mormon Stories ends mediation talks with the Mormon Church. You may recall that they were in mediation talks about something or other. Mormon Church not happy about something or other. And apparently, John Dehlin and Mormon Stories were not willing to accede to their demands, and therefore mediation is over. Bill Reel will take that story. Courting on missions. I think that's my story. Is BYU trying to become even more religious with new class changes? Gerontocracy in the Quorum of the 15. That's like blue in the sky. Gerontocracy in the Quorum of the 15. More Mormon Easter news. Not normal. Mormon. More Mormon Easter news. Bonus RFM's Undercover Report. That must be my story. When I went back to church yesterday. BYU threatened to expel Indigenous student over traditional braids. Utah schools reading Bible. What could be wrong with that? And temple updates. Vienna, Linden, Salt Lake City, and Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm guessing it's got to be Rebecca. So let's start with the first story. Bill Reel has that. And take it away, Bill.
All right. So let me just note, this is what happened. John Dehlin, we've covered this in the past with what's been going on. The LDS Church has approached John Dehlin and Mormon Stories, making a list of requests about what needs to be changed so that they see Mormon Stories, they meaning the LDS Church, see Mormon Stories and John Dehlin as not violating their trademark. And so they've been in mediation recently. And then suddenly John posted this on the left. Mediation talks with the LDS Church have ended with no agreement being reached. We cooperatively addressed every one of their reasonable requests, even prior to meditation, including, by the way, changing of his logo, which I show the new logo there on the screen.
That could be prior to mediation, I'm guessing. Maybe they were meditating too. I don't know.
Oh, did I say meditation? Sorry. Even prior to mediation. In the end, the church's demands were just too unreasonable, and we walked away. I don't know if the church will actually pursue any formal legal action. We don't think they have any legitimate claims, and we are prepared to fight if that ends up being the case. We are not willing to be bullied into allowing the church to micromanage our organization and interfere with our mission. John Dehlin in the Open Stories Foundation board. And then when he posted this on Facebook, he also added this thing at the top. It reiterates pretty much the same, but I will read it. Mediation talks with the LDS Church have ended with no agreement being reached. We cooperatively addressed every one of their reasonable requests. I think it's the exact same thing. We are not willing to be bullied into allowing the church to micromanage our organization for its mission. So same thing in his post. There's a recent picture of John Dehlin. There's the new logo from the Open Stories Foundation. The line that I found most interesting is we don't think they have any legitimate claims, and we are prepared to fight if that ends up being the case. We've covered this in the past as well, and this was several months back when this story was first happening. Cara Gagliano, a lawyer who deals with trademark issues at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, pointed out in the Salt Lake Tribune article you see there in the top right corner why Dehlin might think their claim isn't legitimate. She explained that in basic terms, a trademark can fall apart in two main ways. Either it becomes so common that it no longer belongs to anyone, or the organization using it walks away from it and shows no real intent to keep using it. Gagliano says it's usually hard to prove that someone abandoned trademark. Most groups don't come right out and say, we're done with this. But in this situation, the church did exactly that. asking its members and the world to no longer use it, meaning the word Mormon, calling such use a victory for Satan. For years now, the church has been very clear. Stop using the word Mormon. Use the full name instead. They've pushed the members, the media, and even scholars to drop the term altogether. And they didn't just say it, they acted on it. They changed website names, social media accounts, and branding across the board. This is an organization actively distancing itself from the very word it now wants to control again. That's why Gagliano says this looks like a pretty straightforward case of abandonment. Now, on top of that, Mormon is a general term that's utilized describing all factions that come out of the Restoration movement, which means they could likely end up losing on either account, and both together, I believe, could be a real issue. So I'll just note that. My final slide here, John Dehlin is basically saying, if you think you have a case, then go ahead, make it. I dare you. But we don't think you do. And there's real risk here for the church, because if they take this to court and they lose, they don't just lose this one dispute. They weaken any future claim to that word. And the threats, well, they stop working. The leverage disappears. So this isn't just about Mormon stories. This is about whether the church can actually control the use of the word Mormon at all. And at this point, Mormon Stories and John Dehlin have drawn a line. The church can move forward or it can walk away. But if they choose to act, they may not like where it leads. So, hey, Mormon Church, the ball's in your court, Chief. Thoughts from you guys? I like this. I like that they picked on him first, and he said enough's enough. I'm not going not one jot or tittle further. What do you two think?
Yeah, and I think he's holding the line for all of us who have the name or the word Mormon in our titles in some way, or even our actual names like Radio Free Mormon. My co-host Landon, he just made the comment, and we've been talking about this, that he doesn't feel that this mediation ever was meant to go anywhere. It was just a smokescreen. It was just something to throw out to say, yeah, we tried, we did it. And they just intend to move ahead on whatever it is that they're going to do. And I just question, reasonable demands. John Dehlin said that he definitely took care of those, gave into those. What are the other demands? Like, honestly, what are they asking Mormon Stories to do? To go back through all their episodes and take out every time they say Mormon? I mean, is it that extreme? I just wonder exactly what they're intending, and I'm sure we'll find out at some point. I think it's interesting that their trademark is up in 2 years. I don't know if a lot of people realize this. And in order to, reestablish your trademark, you do have to prove that you use it. It's an integral part of your business model. And as Bill said, they've done exactly the opposite. They've pretty much gone like this. Don't you dare say it, to the point where their members, their downline, are correcting people if you accidentally use the word Mormon. So it's all getting more and more interesting. But I did notice, because of course I'm tracking Easter like a pit bull, on some of the Easter websites from the church, it says go to easter.mormon.org. So they are still funneling people over to that URL, mormon.org. So I'm not quite sure what that means. We'll see. I'm fascinated like you are, Bill.
RFM?
I think for all the stated reasons that the facts could not line up better for John Dehlin and Mormon Stories, for them to be able to continue to use the word Mormon, and for the church not to disallow that under copyright or trademark law, because the church has slept on its rights and has publicly eschewed them and everything that you've already said. And meanwhile, John Dehlin has been chugging along like the little engine that could for 21 years as Mormon Stories, and they haven't said a word, which will be factored into how much they think this is important and how they have protected this. Because it's not like John Dehlin was off in a corner somewhere. Everybody knew about Mormon Stories. I mean, my gosh, it's been a decade since they excommunicated the man. It'd be hard to say that they didn't know about a guy they excommunicated. So I think that the church is reaching out in mediation to try and get from John Dehlin what they are worried they will not get if they go to court. And now the worst decision the church could make, I think, would be to file a lawsuit against John Dehlin and Open Stories Foundation, which is why I predict that that is exactly what they will do.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. So on one hand, you're right. Like, let's watch them make the stupid move. But on the other hand, if they don't, then they're sort of nodding to the fact that you're right. We don't really want to fight this. We think there's a good chance we would lose.
Hubris is something that the church is acquainted with.
Nice. Well, that's all I've got, my friends.
Okay, well, I've got a short story too. Thank you for that, Bill Reel. Here's what we've got going on here. Courting, and that's courting, going courting, courting converts. And I'm sorry, what, Rebecca?
I was just singing along. Show
Seven
tunes.
Brides?
My favorite, Seven Brides, Seven Brothers.
Yes, a Mormon's favorite musical, always.
That's right.
Courting converts and finding your companion, your eternal one, on your LDS mission. By Dylan Eubank and Peggy Fletcher Stack, the Salt Lake Tribune. This was a massive puff piece. And I'm going to spare you the agonies of reading through all these stories. And I'm going to go over the basic facts, and I'll describe it to you so that you can read it if you wish. There are, of course, mission rules against sex, dating, touching, and even flirting. Yes, there are mission rules about that. But there's no law against looking. Yes, there is a second time. Sorry. Relating, talking, observing, or simply finding commonality. Yeah, there's lots of laws against that on the mission. What's the old saying? If you look once, you're a man. If you look twice, you're not a missionary. No matter the limits, the natural laws of attraction still apply. Sure. Clearly, church president Dehlin H. Oaks, oh my gosh, they didn't put the S at the end of his name.
They did better than Stevenson.
Well, he gave him one S too many. Now they're giving him one S too few.
So Dallas Oak. That's the new name.
Dallas Oak. President Dallas Oak is all for such relationships that start with mutual respect on a mission. What is he thinking? I know exactly what he's thinking. And actually, this part of the story will say exactly what he's thinking. It's pretty obvious what he's thinking. On a mission and lead to temple marriage afterward. That's what he's thinking. In a recent interview, the 93-year-old church leader said he hoped reducing the minimum age of female missionaries to 18, as it is for men, would produce more marriages after mission service. So this is exactly why it is, apparently from the horse's mouth, that they finally made women equal to men in terms of the age that they could go on their mission, which I don't think has happened ever before. It's still a year and a half for women, I think, and 2 years for men. But the age is there. So this was not a burst of, I don't know, a sentiment that women should be on an equal footing with men. And if men can start when they're 18, then so can women. No, it was to get them married off sooner after the fact. That's what he's interested in. Any thoughts from you, Rebecca?
Yep. You could see this coming a mile away. As I've talked about before, statistically, there is a huge bubble of LDS youth turning 18 this next year. It's much like the baby boomers. It's kind of moving its way through. Lots more kids. He needs to get these kids connected, finding each other, married, and having babies as soon as possible to replenish dwindling numbers. This is what it's all about. Otherwise, they never would have done it, because our entire life we heard, oh, you can't have young people the same age together. That's cats and dogs living together. You know, this was something that was taboo. Lock up your heart. You just did not do it. And now here they are encouraging it. And I've seen some things anecdotally where this is actually happening. I saw a post from a concerned relative saying, my nephew was on a mission. He's been out 2 months and he's already had 2 girlfriends, 2 mission girlfriends. They just text, but they're committing. I don't know how he's going to pick. And that's only 2 months in.
He's committed to 2 girls already?
I'm not sure if at the same time, but he's had 2 mission girlfriends already. So okay. I'm telling you, this is going to be love triangles, jealousy, competition, fisticuffs over the girls. It's just not what a mission is supposed to be, but it's all so they can get them married. I think we all see that.
It sounds like it might be interesting for a change. What do you think, Bill?
I think there's already enough missionaries who get into some sin on missions and go home early. And now you've told missionaries that towards the end of their mission, it is safe to do this. There are going to be numerous more exponentially more instances of breaking the law of chastity and causing more and more missionaries to go home.
If the trumpet give an uncertain call, who shall prepare himself for the mission? Back to the story. He went so far as to describe a marriage between 2 former missionaries who met during their volunteer stints, i.e. their missions, as perfectly appropriate. Well, that happens. Sure, that happens. I think the Mounts have that story, don't they? Alan and
Mhm.
Katie
Mhm.
over in Portugal, they were missionaries. Yeah, that's fine. The problem is when they start getting up to the hanky and the panky before they get released from the mission. This marks a change from decades of worries that if young men and women served at the same age, they might be tempted to break the mission prohibition on intimacy. Do you think that was part of it? Do you think that was the thing about being a different age?
That was a huge part of it. That's what I
Do
was
you?
always told, that a 19-year-old boy would never look at a 21-year-old sister. She's old,
When
right?
they're the only thing around, yeah, you'll look.
Yeah, well, maybe that's true, but that was the idea, that they could never have anything in common, and a 21-year-old sister certainly would never look romantically at a punk 19-year-old. That was kind of the idea. That 3-year gap separated them from ever ending up together, unless it was much later after, the mission, when they were older. But, even 18 and 19, they still wanted to keep that little window. Maybe 19-year-olds won't be interested in, that age, but now it's the very same age. So,
It's funny to me because I had at least 3 semi-romantic dalliances at the MTC alone.
what?
Well, as romantic as you can be in the MTC. Your thoughts, Bill?
We'll see. I want to see how this unfolds over a few years of missionaries thinking this is okay based on Elder Oak's words that it is okay.
Yeah, this is what happens when you open the door. When you give them an inch, you know what they're going to take, President Oaks? Well, you're going to find out. Okay, so let's see the next part, the next slide. There's some elders and sisters. These post-mission matches may not only help reduce the average age of wedlock. Goodman said he's a professor at BYU, and he's on to President Oak, but also prevent young adults from becoming spiritually stagnant. Yeah, it's all for their own good. You shoehorn them into the freaking temple and get them married as fast as you can, and that's what they mean by not being spiritually stagnant, because your growth just zooms after you've been to the temple, man. It's incredible. Here's what he says. He's a religion professor. Part of it is the reality that the age of marriage is continually shifting later. Yes, it is. And that is becoming concerning, both from a spiritual as well as a relational aspect. Now, I understand the spiritual, the relational I don't, but I understand what's worrying the leaders of the church. I think the sociological changes that have happened have encouraged church leaders to say, we need to address this in a way that hopefully encourages young adults to not camp out, to not stop moving forward in their life, but to actually continue progressing. You see, that's the thing. Progression means having children. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else, any other kind of progress. It means we need you to start having children as soon as possible. That can only be done in the church if you're married, and we want you married in the temple. So we're going to make it so, I don't know, you graduate primary and you head out for 2 years on your mission. That's what's coming. Let me see here, because they're just going to keep lowering it as much as they can. I think this is the one that you referred to, Rebecca.
Yeah, this is the one.
Anonymous member saying, my nephew's on a stateside mission. He has been out for 2 months and has already had 2 sister missionary girlfriends. Oh, it was 2 months.
Yeah, 2 months.
I thought you'd said weeks. Okay. 2 months, I totally get.
That would have meant a lot.
She says they were just texting each other. Oh, yeah. Her nephew's giving her all the information. Is this common for modern missionaries, or is he an outlier? Well, he's an outlier now, but it's going to start becoming common, I think. Did you want to mention this one? You sent me this one as well, Rebecca.
Yeah, this
did
was
you
the
put that
answer.
picture in there too?
I didn't put that picture in there. No.
Bill, you put a picture.
I think Bill
Yeah,
must have
thank
done
you.
that. Yeah, we're all tweaking each other's slides this week. It's pretty funny. Now, this was one of the responses. There were several responses to that post that you just read, and people were saying, no, President Oak has changed this now. It's kind of appropriate, and they're encouraging this. So people are definitely educating this original poster on things have changed. It's not lock up your heart anymore. You can entertain this. You can let those romantic feelings flow.
Like the Bellamy brothers said.
Yes.
I want everybody to know I never did this on my mission. Not that I didn't want to, but I never did because I was a good missionary, damn it. What do you think, Bill?
Having not served a mission, I looked up to the missionaries. I know the names of the elders who taught me. I served as an assistant ward mission leader immediately after joining the church, and I just thought the world of these kids that they had set aside 2 years for the Lord. And now Elder Oaks has given them permission to be at least partially distracted. I think this changes the church culture in a lot of ways that the brethren have not foreseen.
I really think it's a bad idea, but I don't know. He may get his wish about having more babies in the church.
He
We'll
may
see.
get some of them while they're on their missions.
Mhm.
But long term, I saw in the comments somebody said frenzied dating, which is what this is, will lead to, I would think a lot more relationships that don't work out. And I would love to ask people in the chat, do you know people who have met and married on their mission and divorced pretty
Mm.
quickly after? I personally know 5 couples, and this is in the last couple of years, who were young, married quickly, and luckily none of them had children. And within 2 years, one of them only 6 months, they had parted ways because it's not the mission. Your missionary is not the real person, right? And that's the problem. You're marrying the
That was
missionary,
one of the
not an actual
stories.
person. Yeah.
That was one of the stories saying that they married their mission friend, and
Yeah.
boy, I should have waited because
Yeah. Yeah.
his mission self wasn't his real self. Well, his dating
it.
self won't be his real self either.
Yeah.
We save all the horrible stuff about ourselves to reveal to you after we're married. That's the deal. You should just know it now, I think. Okay, so the next story is about BYU pumping the brakes. Rebecca?
Yeah, another story about, where kids hang out and find their eternal companion, right? Although I feel like if everybody gets married right after their mission, and the girl, of course, comes home 6 months early so she can plan the wedding and everything, they're going to need a whole bunch of more married student housing, because you're going to have freshmen at BYU that are married, maybe even with a child. I mean, it's going to be interesting. But in this case, this is about general education requirements. We all remember this from college, right? GE. And I have everything listed out here from the BYU handbook. We're not going to read it, but GE, or basically a university, will say, hey, I know that you are a biology major, but we want you to take a whole variety of classes so you can be a well-rounded person. So they give you, a choice of hundreds usually of electives that you can take for your general education. And they can be anything from science to more humanities to arts. They just want you to kind of be a well-rounded person once you leave the university with your specific degree. And here's a great picture that shows it. These are people that are graduating and holding in their arms. They have all kinds of knowledge, just different from every different place. And BYU, up until this point, did make their students take all of these GE credits, but not anymore. This is so fascinating to me. So the article says, describing this proposal as divinely inspired and blessed by church leaders, of course, Brigham Young University administrators unveiled to faculty members last month a plan to radically reshape the undergraduate experience at BYU. The changes were discussed and presented to the faculty by the academic vice president, Justin Collings. And his goal, he says, is to homogenize and streamline getting out of college faster. Now, I can see that. I can see that. It takes a long time. Most of us did not finish in 4 years, especially when there's a mission. So they're
Takes
saying,
longer for some of us than for others.
that's exactly it. Some of us stayed a really long time for all kinds of different reasons. So I do understand that, trying to streamline an education, especially when there's so many certificates and things that people are getting, you want to keep a college a viable option. So that's great. I agree with that. However, what they have done is something that I do not at all agree about. And again, they just presented this to faculty. No input from faculty, no input from students. They just said, this is divinely inspired. The church leaders want this. We're going to do it. So instead of all the students would need to complete the same 8 courses crafted to emphasize the religious school's prophetic mission. Yeah, okay, this is your academic career. This is your academic degree. And these 8 classes are going to emphasize your prophetic mission, right? 12 faculty members were interviewed for this article, and they will not go on record as to who they are. Maybe there's somebody I used to know. I don't know. But they were just kind of horrified by this. They say it could be a disaster and an existential threat to BYU, and also unfair to students. And the academic vice president did listen, and he has, as the title of the article says, put the brakes on it for now. I don't for 1 second believe that they're not going to implement this, but they may repackage it in another way. But for now, they're saying, okay, we're going to kind of put this on hold for a second. But what I want to do is share with you the names of the proposed courses, and you guys can make up your mind. Maybe you think this is a great idea for an academic university that when I was going there, it was known as the Harvard of the West. That is what Holland and Lee, the presidents then, before it was a calling, wanted it to be. Talked about great research and, being well known for its academic pursuits. Since then, I think it's really gone the other direction. So this is a picture of Collins who made that announcement. So 8 courses. The first one is BYU Foundations for Student Success. And, that's okay. It's just kind of a general class. This may be the one where they have to read the Musket Talk. I actually think that might be another one. But remember that one? Yeah. Okay. But here we get into the good stuff. Faith and Human Flourishing. Okay. This is an academic elective. Drawing on the social sciences and human arts, the course examines how religious commitment furthers human flourishing, aligning with the university's focus on the power of faith and families. Okay. So this would replace, I don't know, elective in astronomy, right? Or something like that. I can't even express to you how disturbing this is to me. Languages, tongues, and peoples. Are going to talk about different cultures. Here's the one that really gets me. Out of the best books. I'm sure that phrase sounds familiar to you. Preludes to the Restoration. So this class says it explores how women and men across time and space have wrestled with the great questions of the soul through art, music, literature, and philosophy. It also provides how the longings of the millennia have found luminous answers to the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. So I had to make this little meme. It's a kid, his first job interview. Hiring manager's got the resume and says, so your resume says you studied the luminous answers of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. Tell me more, right? So I'd like your opinion right now. You can kind of see the way this is going. RFM and then Bill, what do you think about replacing regular GE requirements that let you explore the entire world with these 8 highly focused, religiously centered classes? What do you think, RFM and then Bill?
I don't even know what this means.
I don't either.
What are luminous answers? This course provides how the longings of the millennia have found luminous answers to the restored gospel. I thought the gospel of Jesus Christ was supposed to be the answer.
You think this credit is going to transfer? You think some other university is going to go, oh yeah, we got a luminous class. Sure, that'll transfer straight over. It's not going to happen.
BYU may have been aiming for the Harvard of the West, but I think they've made it to the Liberty University of the West.
That's it. Yep. What do you think, Bill?
Somebody else said the same thing. So none of these would transfer to other schools. When you say 8 classes, that's not quite your full first year, but that's more than your first semester. You're dedicating a significant portion of your education to insider baseball, inside Mormonism. The church already punishes the kids who lose their testimony by taking their credits away. And now for the kids who want to get out and go somewhere else, it's going to be way more difficult to transfer somewhere else because you will lose those. One of the reasons I didn't graduate college, I went for 3.5 years. I stopped short of my student teaching and my methods classes in elementary education. And one of the main reasons was that in trying to transfer from Bowling Green State University to Ashland University, I had about 15 or 16 credit hours that were going to just not transfer over. And I was going to have to go to the community school and make those up. And that's one accredited university to another with classes that are all focused on higher education. When BYU students try to transfer somewhere else, there will already be some classes that don't transfer anyway in their normal education classes. And these 8 classes will definitely not transfer. The school is making it exponentially more difficult for anybody to leave BYU. So if one loses their testimony, you're not going to be able to transfer out and you're not going to be able to stick around. And so they have made it so that you are going to find yourself in a Sophie's Choice with a hard road ahead of you.
Yep, that's it. And that's why I made the comment. They're turning it into the pathway program, which is, a little bit of academic classes sprinkled in with, so much religion. So I won't read through all the classes, but they all just have a weird twist to them that is through this lens of Mormonism. The class that used to be American Heritage, if any of you went to BYU, you remember that. History, it was amazing. Now it's all about protecting the Constitution and religious freedom. It just is pushing that LDS agenda. So you can pause on this and look at the other ones. But it said that among the most common concerns the faculty members shared with the Tribune was the proposal's potential to devalue diplomas and hurt would-be transfer students, like you guys talked about, by saddling transcripts with idiosyncratic classes likely to raise the eyebrows of human resource and admission officers. What the hell is this, right? Several interviewees expressed particular alarm over the framing of faith and human flourishing and out of the best books, preludes to the restoration. This is actually a phrase out of the D&C. That does not belong in the title of an academic class. And they say there is no way that this is about the students. This is about something else. And of course, another thing that they're concerned about is all the recent, everything that happened with, Clark, I'm going to say it again, Clark W. It's not W, is it? It's something. Our new elder Gilbert, right? I made the joke about Clark Griswold so much that I can't unmake it. That's right.
I think it's Gilbert Clark, isn't it?
I think it is. Yes.
No, it's Clark Gilbert.
No, it's Clark Gilbert. Yeah, no, I said that. But is his middle initial H?
Why can't he have a normal name like everybody else?
I can't say it anymore because I made that Chevy Chase joke over and over. I'm a terrible newscaster. Anyway, so he, of course, was the commissioner of education for the church. He sorted the faculty into all the different houses, open faux. So the faculty's already really gun shy and concerned. And there's a new now commissioner. That's Elder Rasban, not the Elder Rasban, but the other Elder Rasban. We talked about that. So there's just a lot of concern about that. And, for now, they have said, okay, there's Elder Rasban and Brother Collins. They've said, we're going to dial it back, but they're not going to dial it back. The first sentence of what I just reported on said, this is inspired and by design from the church leaders. So this is what's going to happen. I do want to point out, another thing they say is no input from the students whatsoever. There should be some kind of input from faculty and students. And as somebody already brought up in the comments, are you guys aware that at BYU, you already have 14 religion credits? Now, you can choose among some of the different religion credits, but you must take, marriage in the family or the eternal family? Yeah, the eternal family is a class you have to take. 14 plus 8. Do you know how much of your college career is now spent on these types of classes? Of course, it's going to raise eyebrows if you try to go somewhere else or get a job somewhere else. So anyway, we'll see what happens. We'll monitor, but I will make the prediction that this is not going away. It's just kind of stalled for now for PR. Final thoughts from you guys on that, RFM, then Bill?
No, I don't have any other thoughts, or if I did, it escaped me. Well, yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
Just what you guys are saying, that this isn't all going to, you're spending so much time trying to lock people in step with the religion that the kids will go out of BYU with an education that is less than par. And I think when people go to apply for jobs, having gotten their degree from BYU, I think there's already a slight roll of the eyes. And I think that it will be even more frowned upon by real employers running real businesses in the real world when you show up with a BYU degree.
And to state the obvious, I did remember what it was I was thinking of, Rebecca, which is that it seems the motivation behind this is likely they're still trying to get more indoctrination into these kids' heads so they won't leave the church.
Yep.
And they're going to be trying to have little kids in Utah reading from the Bible too. And we'll get to that story here in a second. They want to pound in as much as they can, everywhere they can, Mormonism into these kids' heads because they think that that's helping them. They don't realize that that's part of the problem. They're running to escape all the Mormonism pounding.
And not only that, they're trying to keep them from experiencing anything else. Oh, heaven forbid, what if you took a philosophy class and you started thinking in a different way? Well, we can't have that. Or you took some kind of a geology class and you started going, wait, 6,000 years old? You can't have that either. So promote the one, dial back the other, restrict that, and that's exactly how they're doing it.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for that story, Rebecca. Here's another story.
Yeah. So this one here is the Gerontocracy in the church. And Matthew Harris in the Salt Lake Tribune took a look back at the history of how the LDS Church chooses its next prophet. Today, it always goes to the most senior apostle, and the church even recently added such to its handbook. So the article from the Trib is in the top right corner. There in the bottom left, under General Handbook of Instruction 5.1.1, under the section General Authorities, and this is when it talks about the death of the president of the church. It says, as a quorum, they consider when the first presidency should be reorganized. When it is reorganized, the senior apostle becomes the new president of the church and calls his counselors. We're going to run into a moment. I think the church made a bad move here, and I'll tell you why. We all know that this is the way it works, but there will come a time when the most senior leader in the church is incapacitated, will not be able to perform their functions, will not be able to show up once in front of a camera. And the church will then have to do something different than this. And so leaving room for the possibility that something different could be done, I think was needed and necessary, even as the rest of us made fun of it.
Yeah, has it not happened at least twice since Hubie Brown made that idea known or suggested it with President Kimball and then his successor?
Yeah.
David O. McKay with Hubie Brown. Yeah.
And he
Right,
mentioned
that's probably what led him to think this would be a good idea.
And he mentions both of the instances here in this. So according to the Tribune article, that system is more tradition than revelation. And one apostle, as you guys mentioned, Hubie Brown, recognized that and quietly pushed for something different. In 1945, Hubie Brown had a candid conversation. By the way, this article I thought was full of interesting quotes dealing with the behind-the-scenes machinations of leadership that I hadn't heard before. And so I really appreciated having the chance to read this. In 1945, Hubie Brown had a candid conversation with J. Reuben Clark about what he was seeing inside the church. Clark later wrote in his journal that Brown was hearing a lot of open frustration among members. Much of that concern centered on one issue, the growing age of the church's top leadership, in the sense that too many of those in charge were getting old. In 1945, Brown had this candid conversation. He said, quote, this is what was written in the journal. Hubie Brown, quite a long talk with him. This is J. Reuben Clark's journal. He says a very great deal of frank talk and dissatisfaction in the church. Dissatisfaction seemed to be over the fact that so many of the general authorities were getting old. By the way, I think Hubie Brown was 74 years old when he was called into the Quorum of the 12. Brown saw this issue up close while working with President David O. McKay, who was in his 90s at the time. McKay's health was declining. He often missed meetings. Brown also noticed that he struggled to remember things and had a hard time making decisions. Privately, Brown told close associates that, quote, President McKay cannot make decisions and is not capable of running the church, unquote. When word got back to McKay's secretary, the well-known Claire Middlemiss, about what Brown had been whispering in private, I think she was made famous by Greg Prince's David O. McKay biography. But Brown is telling everybody that President McKay cannot run the church. Brown also told his friends that 93-year-old apostle Joseph Fielding Smith, who was next in line for the church presidency, wasn't fit to lead either. What do you think? By the way, I'll just stop for a second. What do you think of, I've always loved Hubie Brown as much as one can love an LDS leader for doing the right thing or trying to be healthy in how they approach the church. What do you think about Hubie Brown behind the scenes telling people that David O. McKay and Joseph Fielding Smith are unfit for business?
Yeah, he's a badass. I'm not kidding. And he's the only one, except for President Uchtdorf, who was then demoted out of the first presidency for this kind of just seeing things, eyes wide open. And this book coming out by Matt Harris on Hubie Brown, everybody needs to pre-order. Everybody needs to go get this. It's going to be incredible. I saw Matt Harris present a lot of this at Sunstone last year. And this is exactly it. He was telling everybody, this person is not fit to lead. And when they're not fit to lead, there's a vacuum. We've seen this over and over. You have, 12 angry men fighting, power grab. In David O. McKay's case, his secretary, Claire Middlemiss, was running the church basically behind the scenes. She was controlling who he saw. She was influencing who he appointed and called. A woman was running the church. I really hope she gets a biography written about her, because it's pretty incredible. Even getting a fur coat from somebody that was hoping to get appointed to the first presidency. It's incredible. But that's what happens when someone is that old. They're just not fit or capable. That's not disparaging. I wouldn't want to run something when I was over 80 years old. There's just too much room for other kind of calculating people. And I'm talking about leadership to push their agendas. And we have seen this over and over. So it's not healthy for any organization. And I don't know why they don't see this. It's not healthy.
RFM.
I think that Mormons are married to their myth of a prophet like Moses who's running the church. And even when it's obvious to them that he's not, or it's never obvious to them that he's not, because they always believe he is, even if he's not showing up for general conference. But then if he's not at general conference, they're going to be hiding him pretty well. And then someone will come out and talk about their granddad, like Steve Benson, I believe it was, did about his granddad, Ezra Taft Benson, because he was a member of the family and knew exactly the kind of condition that his grandfather was in during the end of his presidency of the church. So, and that's something that people do not want to hear, that the leaders of the church try and suppress, because what's the difference between the Mormon church and the good old USSR? Not that much, it turns out.
Yeah. And as you point out, Steve Benson, he made mention that they would prop Ezra Taft Benson up for photo ops, but he was late stage dementia, didn't know anything going on around him, and the church still put him in front of a camera and treated it like there was a walking, talking prophet upon the earth. Sort of crazy when you think about it. So go ahead, please.
I'm sorry. I do think one of the problems is that a failure to deal with reality, because I think the argument is for not doing it, for allowing them to continue to be the president until they finally die, no matter what they go through on the way, that is allowing God's hand to be manifest in the church. And in order to prevent political machinations, I'll use your word, Bill, machinations amongst other people in the quorum of the 12. The reality, however, is that we have seen over and over, thanks to great historians like Greg Prince and Matt Harris, that weakness, the inability to do anything, the whatever it might be, dementia, making them unfit for office, making them so they don't really even know what's going on. Well, power abhors a vacuum. And what we have seen is other apostles go in to use that to promote their own purposes and what they want to have done. All right. So what we know is it's happening the way things are. It's being used for political ends by people who are not the prophet. That's the reality. So I think we need to do something about the prophet. And, can't they just retire? Can't they have some period of their life where they can be happy? I know that the church would want them to go on another mission, I'm sure. But can they just retire and have some years to themselves?
Don't you think, I'll just put this back up and I'll go on here in just a second, but don't you think that some of this comes out of this? Again, this is my hunch. None of these men have said this. They would publicly say otherwise, but that there's a sense of, I've lived this long. The church owes this to me. Like I've made it. I deserve this. I'm the oldest guy now. I've been here the longest. And so why would I take emeritus status? Why would I retire and go off and play with grandkids when we know what happens when people don't have the thing to keep them busy anymore and they've stepped away from stuff? And they get to have influence. They get to have everybody in the room stand up anytime they show up. Every 6 months, they get to stand in front of a camera and say whatever message they want to say. And I think they just, in their minds, it's like, there is no way you'll have to drag my dead body before I give up the opportunity to have lived the longest and to be the head honcho who makes the decisions.
You know, you make me think of another reason why it is actually that they probably do it this way that makes sense. Because if you retire a prophet and call a new one, even though he's retired, what happens if he gets a different idea from the new prophet?
Hmm.
You know, you're looking at schism. You almost have to let them die in their traces.
Yeah, that's a great point, that if one was still alive and stepped down and the other one did something that riled everybody up, the one who is still living but not there might be able to take a segment of the church with him, huh? Well,
Especially if it were David O. McKay.
yeah.
I think they're keeping them alive. If you look at the statistics on how old they are, and my co-host and I have looked into this, they are beating the odds. There are no other group of 15 men that are that age. They're a statistical anomaly. They outlive their wives. They should not be this old. I think there's something going on with medical treatment, keeping them alive. I think there are measures that most everybody else doesn't have. And that's interesting, because if we really believe that God leaves the prophet alive until his purpose is completed, they should all forsake any kind of medical care and just let it naturally happen. Let God's will dictate. That's what I think. But look at the stats on how old these gentlemen are. It is a complete anomaly.
Well, they kind of weed the weak ones out of the herd by natural selection, don't they?
I think maybe so.
And at this point, too, for the most part, they're only calling, let's say at the youngest, 55 years old
Mhm.
to 65 years old. And that's the 15th person. So now for them to wait until everybody in front of them dies, by the time they get there, they couldn't be any younger than 85 years old. So from here on out, Mormonism will always have an 85-year-old prophet or older at the helm. I don't see any other way around that. Okay, I'll put this back up. Brown also expressed similar concerns about Joseph Fielding Smith, who was next in line, saying he didn't believe Smith was fit to take over either. Brown told the apostles, quote, President Smith could not possibly assume this position. He sleeps now through most of the meetings and is too old, unquote.
You're not supposed to tell the truth in the Mormon church.
He did, though.
He had integrity. He was awesome.
In spite of the modern handbook's wording, Brown in the past noted, quote, and this to me is what violates what they put in the handbook. Hubie Brown said that in the past, quote, the matter of the president of the Quorum of the 12 becoming the president is after all simply a tradition. It need not be followed. Hubie Brown claimed that the former church president, Heber J. Grant, who was Brown's mission president, by the way, and his mentor when he was called into the 12, taught him to conclude that there was nothing doctrinal or sacred about the most senior apostle becoming president. It wasn't rooted in scripture. It was simply tradition. That's what Hubie Brown was told by another apostle. Other apostles also knew there were risks with a frail Joseph Fielding Smith leading the church. Would he stumble over his words in conference, causing embarrassment? By the way, I went today and listened to, I think, his last talk as church president. He talks so slow and he stumbles over his words quite a bit. So their fear, I think, to some degree was realized. There was enough there to raise eyebrows. Smith was falling asleep in meetings, having memory issues, repeating himself, and everyone knew the strong opinions Grant held about succession. But instead of adjusting course, they stayed the path. The fear of breaking tradition outweighed the concerns. As Kimball framed it, the proper order had to be preserved unless God explicitly said otherwise.
Just like the priesthood ban.
Yes. Now, that last line, I want to expound on that for a moment. Brown kept pushing for change, even though it cost him. After McKay's death, he was removed from the first presidency in 1970. but he didn't back down. At one point, he watched Joseph Fielding Smith sit through meetings with the apostles for 7 hours without saying a word. And that seemed to solidify his concern. In other words, he wasn't there. From there, Brown put forward his boldest idea yet to rethink how the church selects its president. His proposal was simple but disruptive. Instead of automatic seniority, apostles would choose the next president in a private meeting, similar to how the Catholics select a pope, which I think is great because this at least gives the mirage of revelation. This at least gives the illusion of that. Leaders would be given emeritus status at age 70, and the focus would shift to health, energy, and ability to lead, not just who had been there the longest. It also would allow the entire group to weed out someone they're like, you should never let that guy lead the church. It would have upended the entire system. In the end, though, the apostles rejected it. Even though there was precedent for releasing leaders due to age or health, they chose to preserve the tradition, and now they've codified it. They refused to adjust the proper order of things, as then Apostle Spencer Kimball stated. They insisted such would require divine revelation to alter the accepted practice of the most senior apostle becoming president of the church. And I will just say this, and then I want to get your thoughts. What they are self-acknowledging is the quiet thing out loud. It would take revelation to do something different. And until revelation is received, we will just do the status quo way of doing things. So they're telling you on this end of things that there never was revelation about who would lead the church next. Your thoughts?
Well, I think then they're going to get what they're going to get if they won't budge on that. And it's a system that does not work, and more people can see it and are frustrated. And so imagine being a lower level apostle, right? You're on the sidelines the whole time. There's not even any chance that coach is going to put you in, right? Put me in, coach. It's not going to happen. So what do? I think we saw this with President Nelson. You have pet projects that are in the back of your minds. You have grudges against other people, maybe that have dissed you, like Hinckley. You know, I'm talking about Nelson here. You have agendas. What happens when you're finally made the prophet? Are you willing to, take the health of the church into consideration? Are you willing to think about what is best for everybody? No, you've been stewing on your pet projects, agendas, and grudges for decades. What is it that Wendy Nelson said? Oh, now that he's finally on top, he's unleashed to implement all these things, without input from anybody else. So if corporations ran this way, nobody would let a corporation run this way. You would never have the oldest person be the CEO, someone who had sat there the whole time and had old grudges and old pet projects. It is super unhealthy, but everybody says, that's what the Lord wants. Well, the Lord is going to run it into the ground because this is absolutely ridiculous. And it's sad for them. They are elderly. I spent a lot of time in the last 4 years in assisted living with my parents. They need to rest. There's nothing good about, staying the course, enduring to the end. Let these guys rest. It's sad. If you look at it that way, it's really sad.
God says, my ways are not your ways. My ways are higher than your ways. Isaiah 55, I think. You know something? I've got to tell this story. And I want to know if anybody else out there remembers this story. And if you could find any video of it, that'd be incredible. It was the early 1990s. It was General Conference. It was the priesthood session. Ezra Taft Benson was the president. He was making some remarks, maybe concluding, I don't know, probably it was a priesthood session, so he usually would speak last as president. And he began going off script. And he was talking, as he often did, about World War II and how he was sent over there by the church to help tend to the physical needs of the saints. And that, I think, was all on script and in the teleprompter. But then he began talking about how he went to a meeting of the saints, and his words, as best as I can recollect them, were, and we had nothing to use for the sacrament but communist potato peelings. And we used them. But by this point, 2 individuals had appeared at his side as if by magic, one looking suspiciously like Counselor Monson and the other like Counselor Hinckley, who then took him by the arms and gently walked him back to his chair and sat him down and took over the meeting, or took it back over, I should say. Now, does anybody out there remember that? Do you remember that, Bill, or you, Rebecca?
I remember potato peelings, but I don't remember that it was communist. So that's kind of interesting. I wonder if we went back and looked, because, there's going to be a transcript if they took out communists. But I do remember him mentioning potato peelings once.
Maybe because he was getting animated. And I think that's why they thought we need to intercede. And they did.
Yeah.
So that's one example. And it's also, I just tell the story because I don't want it to fade away into obscurity.
Yeah.
But the other thing I'll say is this. If we can go back to that thing you had on before, Bill, that last slide, or was that, let's see that. Well, eventually. Now you're going to do it. Okay. Now we'll do it again. Like trying to go through a door at the same time. Okay. So they refused to adjust the proper order of things, right? They wouldn't do it. They insisted such would require divine revelation to alter the accepted practice of the most senior apostle becoming president of the church. Here's the thing that kills me about the LDS church is from time to time, what they think is most important becomes self-evident. This is very important to them. All this seniority stuff that to me is not important. But when it really crystallized for me was when I found out that all the apostles, when they enter a room, they have to line up before they enter the room, and they have to line up in order of seniority. And the same when they leave the room, they have to leave in order of seniority. And at this point, I thought, I think they're telling me where their priorities are placed. And I don't think it's on the things of God. I think it's on the things of men.
Yeah, they've taken endurance to the end a step too far.
Okay. So here's the next story. What really happened inside the LDS church on Palm Sunday? That was yesterday. An undercover report from me, RFM. So here's the whole deal. I think you all know what's been going on if you've been following the show or the LDS church. They have suddenly discovered Palm Sunday for the last 200 years. They've suddenly discovered they've been practicing it for the last 200 years. No, they're going to be doing Palm Sunday. They're going to be doing everything, all the things that used to be apostate Christianity, the church is now embracing. And so they're talking about Palm Sunday. So I wanted to know what was going to happen in church on Palm Sunday. And especially because they're going to celebrate Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday on the day before Easter, on the week before Easter, because on Easter they're having general conference. And that's not moving for nobody. So here's what I put on my Facebook page. Heading to church today to see what the Mormons are doing to celebrate Palm Sunday. Full report to follow. This is that full report. This thing went crazy. As of the time I took these pictures, 304 comments, 794, whatever you call those, reactions, something like that. And only one share, by the way. So that's really going crazy. And a lot of people had a lot of things to say. There were some people who intuited that I must have some evil design in doing this, and that only a horrible person would spend Sunday doing that horrible thing. Well, I had predicted it would be a standard ordinary sacrament meeting with maybe some kids waving palm fronds or branches. Do you remember I said that, Rebecca?
I do.
You remember I said that, Bill? I was wrong. There weren't even any freaking branches. This was so disappointing. It was a completely expected disappointment, however. Now, I want to tell you what happened, okay? There were three musical numbers, the primary kids sang, then there was a talk, then the youth chorus, then the talk, then the brother and sister playing piano and violin, then another talk. This is all Mormons can do, is sing and talk. So primary kids, they gave a really bad song. It was really badly rehearsed. Maybe three of them were singing. One of them was wailing halfway through until finally got taken off to its mother. But, we always give them a pass because they're kids and you're supposed to. But that was really not good. Okay, the youth chorus was just as bad as the primary kids, but they don't get a pass on being cute. And I think about three of them were singing too. And finally, a brother and a sister, I weaned that from the fact they look like they're teenagers and they have the same last name in the program. A brother and sister playing piano and violin, he the piano, she the violin. This was probably the highlight of the entire show, or the entire meeting. I thought they did a really nice job together. They'd obviously worked on it, which is always nice. And yeah, I thought that was the best part. So here we go to the talks. 3 speakers. A youth speaker read something about Easter, and I'm not exactly sure what it was. She read the entire talk from her phone, I think, and read it so quickly that it was really hard to follow exactly what she was saying. But it was obvious that she wanted to get out of there as quick as possible, and I think she succeeded. Then there was a woman speaker, and she mentioned Easter at the beginning of her talk, but it segued quickly into how important family is. And family is so important, at which point Wendy is texting me saying, if family is so important in the Mormon church, why are they having general conference all over Easter next week? By the way, I should add, if it's not on a slide, that the bishop did get up. This was 1 hour yesterday. It wasn't 2 hours. Everybody seemed happy by that. I don't understand why. Because we used to be really happy about 3 hours at church. But then I found out that when we had 2, people were even happier. And now that it was only 1 yesterday, people seem to be so happy they couldn't stand it. So that was only 1 hour yesterday. And the bishop directs everybody to go home and spend time with your families. Zero direction. There is zero direction going on from the top leadership to the local leadership about what the heck you're supposed to do on Palm Sunday. Does anybody know? Does anybody have any idea what Palm Sunday is about or how you might go about observing it? By the way, Rebecca, there's no sign in front of this. It was
not
the
in this
Center.
building. Okay.
And I looked. No sign in front about come worship with us for Easter on Palm Sunday. That sign.
Oh
So
yeah.
then
No,
the
I collect pictures of that sign. I can't even tell you how many people have sent me pictures of that sign in their area, but in your area, they didn't have it.
Mm-mm. No. So at least they can't be accused of false advertising up here. And the third person was a male speaker. He was the bishop who talked briefly about what Palm Sunday is in the New Testament, right? Here he comes in and it's Hosanna, Hosanna, Zanna, Zanna, Ho. And released everybody from the chapel without the second hour so they could spend time with their families. No objections were heard. So topically, yeah, they sort of mentioned a few things that, look, here's the deal. This was not different from any other church meeting ever. Except maybe that they had these songs, which were supposed to be referenced to, one of them was Gethsemane. That was the name of the song.
Yeah.
It was like Gethsemane having to listen to it. So it was aptly named. But I don't know what they're doing because there's no direction. So they're left to try and commemorate Palm Sunday within a Mormon framework. And I think the Mormon framework is very limited. And it's why I had called Jim Bennett the other day. It was actually a couple of weeks ago now when I found out about this, since he's in the choir. And I asked if there was somebody who had been called who was in charge of pageantry. Because Mormons know nothing about pageantry. And they know nothing about what it takes to make Palm Sunday Palm Sunday. I mean, I thought maybe somebody would at least spring for some kind of little burro and give the kids a little ride up to the, But then again, if other people are waving palm fronds in the burro's face, and things are going to go bad, but at least it would be memorable.
Were there
What do you think?
flowers? Can I ask you, were there flowers at all? Any kind of floral arrangement or anything?
No, none that I noticed.
Okay. And I think they're kind of handicapped this year because last year they really did do it to death. And the Tabernacle even had a waving your palm frond kind of a concert there. But this year it's not Palm Sunday. Remember, it's Palm/Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
You're putting it all into one. And so I don't think they really know what to do or what to even talk about. Triumphal entry, the end of the story, flip way ahead to the cross. It's all messed up. So, but I'm not surprised by what you described.
Well, lilies are common on Easter, right?
Uh-huh.
What do you think, Bill?
I'm still trying to process that people were thrilled with just 1 hour of church, RFM.
It's mind-bending, isn't it? You wouldn't think.
It is a strange thing. You mentioned this, which is every ward is doing their own thing. It's a lay ministry. They're untrained. And where would they get direction from? I mean, the prophets, seers, and revelators are for the first time navigating Palm Sunday themselves. They don't know what these religious events, holidays, sacred days in the Christian calendar, they have no idea what these mean. And we don't have a plan in place of how to operate. And then I go back to something I shared with Rebecca today, which is that there were so many comments in earlier church history. If we go back to Bruce R. McConkie and before that, that name all of this stuff as pagan holidays that the true Church of Jesus Christ, restored from from his church that he established, would never have these holidays anyway. This is the apostasy, the great apostasy. And so I'm still just boggled at Mormonism doing this 180 turn, and it is now moving forward on a path that prior to this moment, so many past leaders said was illegitimate. So I don't know. Palm Sunday, I guess mainstream Christianity, we are coming whether the members like it or not.
Yeah, Mormons don't even get to have the satisfaction of the courage of their own beliefs anymore.
Mm-mm.
I'm just glad everybody gets it now, because I have been talking about Easter for years now for this exact reason, exactly what Bill just said. This is what we restored past. When I was growing up, we were better than the Christians that were doing this. We had the truth. We looked down on Palm Sunday and Holy Week and all those traditions. We didn't just not practice them. We looked down on them. We knew more. Joseph Smith had taken us in a different direction. And now it's kind of like, you know what? Forget about that. Let's just go back here. And I will tell you, this is interesting. At a college institute, a university institute, I will not mention which one, they brought somebody in to explain to the instructors what Holy Week is and what the days mean, so that they can talk to their students about it. Because you're right, Bill and RFM, they have no idea the significance of the week, the days, how to celebrate, what it means, what the history is. They had to bring somebody in, I'm guessing from another religion possibly, to explain to these institute directors what they can tell their students. So I thought that was very telling and embarrassing, but we shunned all that. We absolutely said that's a false tradition of the apostasy. As for me and my house, we do not do that. And here we are trying to pretend that we've always done it and that we need to do it. And people are the ones that are like, I don't know what to do. So they're doing the best they can, I think.
It's almost like the church just says what it thinks other people want to hear and doesn't really act on it.
Yep.
YouTuber, I think 1961, asked how many people recognize me. A lot. I mean, my gosh. You think I was, I don't know, the hunter home from the hill. Everybody, oh, hello, how you doing? How you doing? And I recognize a number of people. It's surprising. It's been over 10 years. And it just has happened to be one ward. It's not even the ward that I used to attend for the longest period of time before I stopped going. But, you live in a community for 3.5 decades. You get to know a few Mormons. By the way, okay. If you haven't looked at this next slide, don't look. Because I want to ask you, this is from Wendy. Okay. Never been to an LDS service at all. All right. First ever. Guess what her two main observations were? Do you have any idea?
Screaming babies and kids. You can't hear a word.
That's one.
Yeah. That's what most people notice. That does not happen at other churches. Like, it's deafening.
And the first one was no clapping.
Yeah.
What is wrong with these people?
No,
Why don't
no
you clap for people? And I just told her, I said, well, the Mormon Church made an agreement with itself a long time ago that all of its musical productions were so horrendous that there would be no applause ever.
Did she notice the smell of old Cheerios and maybe that odor from the mother's lounge that we've been talking about?
If she did, she was nice enough not to mention it.
Okay.
And the kids, yes, she's talking about the kids. Why don't they have a place? Why don't they have kids' church? That's what they would call it, kids' church, I guess, in the Baptist tradition. I mean, why don't they have kids' church? Every single church, and she's been to J-Dub, she's been to others in her past. Why don't they have a kids? They all have a kids' church. So that it's a win-win situation. Yeah. The kids have a crappy time in the Mormon sacrament meeting because they're being, made to heal in a time and period that they don't want to be. They want to be wriggling and doing things that are interesting to them. So they're making it miserable for the grown-ups. And if the kids were over in their own church, they'd be having fun there, and the grown-ups would be having more fun where they are.
Don't you think
nobody wants to do that?
No.
Don't you think that's one of the ways that early on the church breaks you down, that you do what we tell you to do? You suffer. Suffering is part of the path.
Yeah.
Oh, and it works. I was raised in a family where you couldn't bring a toy. You couldn't bring anything. Like you
Mm.
had to sit there. And so I used to try to do origami with the program. I would make my eyes kind of like go in and out with this weird wall that had dots in it. I tried all these different ways to entertain myself. I was one of the kids that was not, some parents would bring the Barbie dream house, bowls of cereal and milk. No, not me. So, and it is a huge control mechanism for kids. And you're right, RFM. That's the first thing I ever noticed when I started to go to other churches. They have the kids go to a wonderful youth program. They give them that wristband, the number, so they're in contact with the parents if they need them. But then you sit there and you're like, oh my God, I can hear, I can sing, it's a whole different world. And Mormons do not know that world.
Mm-mm. No,
It's
and
cool.
I had to remember. I had to cast my mind back and remember that I felt the same way, both about the clapping, very strongly about the clapping. What is wrong with everybody? And also about the freaking kids. And I just had to tell Wendy, you know something? I guess after a few hundred years, after a few decades, you just sort of get used to it and tune it out. But it's really annoying. And I don't know how the Holy Ghost hangs around that place. By the way, now, Rebecca Biblioteca, this is where we started the show. This is where the show started. Okay. This is where we came in, having to do with a movie that you recommended I go see, and that I did go see yesterday because Ben-Hur has been re-released in all its spectacular glory
That's
on the
right.
big screen. And I took Wendy to go see it. And after watching 3 hours and 45 minutes of Ben-Hur yesterday, I was led to exclaim with the lead character, why did Rebecca tell me to go see this movie?
Not only did I tell you to see it, I found the theaters it was playing at because it's playing everywhere. And in fact, it's playing tomorrow. I think tomorrow's the last day. But you know what? It's a very Eastery movie. So, if you're not going to go, you obviously went to Palm Sunday, but I didn't. So Ben-Hur was how I spent my Easter, pre-Easter. And I've always loved this movie. I don't know why you didn't. Let's take a poll in the comments.
I've never seen the whole thing. And now that I have,
Ah.
I long for those days. I long for yesterday.
Well, I'm
That was
sorry.
incredible. 3 hours and 45 minutes.
Uh-huh.
It's like, okay, here's the director. I just want you to know something. You don't have to have the first line of a scene start 10 seconds after you've started the scene. And you don't have to have the last line of a scene end 10 seconds after that last line. That would cut down on things incredibly. There's a bit of a plot here. It's not worth 3 hours and 45 minutes. It might make a good Saturday Night Live sketch.
And the overture, 10 minutes, right? Before there's even anything on the screen. I dragged my co-host Landon there. I'm going to go to the next slide. Are you finished, RFM, with your recapping of your Palm Sunday?
I think so. I can't believe it won so many Academy Awards. It must have been a slow year for movies.
11 Academy Awards. Oh, and you forgot to talk about this for a minute before we get
It's not
to
just about going to church after more than 10 years. It's about the friends we made along the way.
That's right.
So we got 2 sets of Mormon missionaries, elders who've moved in where the sisters used to be. And they're in the same building as I am. And I went over to see them last night. And actually, they came over to see me at the end of the sacrament meeting yesterday.
I was going to say, you're somebody new. Who's this, right? You're
Mhm.
golden, RFM.
Well, they seem very, very nice. And 2 of them, it was Elder Peterson and Elder something else. I'm sorry. Our one companionship, and they were there. And then the other 2 were somewhere else, I suppose. But they all seem like very, very fine young men.
All right. Is it me now? Am I up?
I don't know. Let's see. Oh,
I
what?
think I am, yes. Because mine kind
Oh.
of piggybacks on what RFM is talking about. And I did want to very quickly, well, first I'll talk about the movie. I love Ben-Hur. I've loved it since I was a kid. I have great memories of watching it with my family. So, the chariot races, come on, the rowing, the drumming. I was riveted to the screen, except for having to get up and go to the bathroom like 12 times because I had a giant Diet Coke and some popcorn. Anyway, and I will say that during the day, we have a slideshow that all of us can add to in preparation for tonight. And as I was checking my slides one last time, RFM had changed the word awesome to awful. So yes, I changed it back. I caught
I don't
that.
think I think Bill did that. Didn't you do that,
Okay,
Bill?
maybe Bill did it. Somebody's been
Well,
messing
maybe it
with
was
my
I.
slides. Anyway,
I don't know. It could have been. By the way, Wendy was so bored that she actually went to sleep during the movie and so hungry because it was so long that she dreamed of baked potatoes.
Okay, I can see going to sleep during Valley of the Lepers. Okay, maybe, but not the other scenes. Come on.
She stayed awake for church, but she slept during this movie.
Yeah, well, I think church took it out of her.
That's probably it. See, that's it. So anyway, I, of course, am going to talk about Easter just a little bit. Easter Watch 2026. This is my last one. Everybody's like, why does she have this soapbox? Why can't she shut up about Easter, right? Well, I can't, for all the reasons that RFM and Bill and I have been talking about. And I will say, someone in the comments said, well, the LDS Church is evolving. Isn't that a good thing? It is a good thing. But I believe they needed to have some kind of statement where they said, look, everybody, I know in the past we said this, and a lot of you were raised this way. And we are now, sort of moving forward in our way of thinking. They need to acknowledge that this is a complete flip-flop from what it has been in the past. And that's what causes all of us to go, what is happening? This is not how it was. So thank you for that recap, RFM, of what it was actually like inside the church. Here is a sign, a church next to my house says, worship with us this Easter, March 29th. There it is. The sign's still up. We're going to talk about that at the end. And again, Palm Sunday became Easter for the LDS Church because next Sunday, actual Easter, is General Conference. And instead of choosing to move it, which they could, there's no rule that they can't, although they'll probably make one, they chose to just forge ahead with their very Mormon-centric meeting. And I made this meme here. It's out of order. Palm Sunday celebrates Jesus arriving in Jerusalem. Easter is the culmination of all those events when he is crucified and then the resurrection. So it's like, all right, kids, let's get ready for Christmas Eve, right? After they've already opened their presents. You're doing the holidays out of order. Did you have a comment, RFM?
I see. Yeah, you probably mentioned this, but I'm back at your sign and I'm thinking the person walking by and looking at that sign for the first time might say, wait a second.
They're
Easter
idiots.
isn't on March 29th.
Exactly. I can't
Easter's
tell you
on
how
March
many.
5th.
Yeah.
Or April 5th, excuse me.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many of these signs. Thank you, everybody who has sent me a sign. These signs are everywhere. Celebrate Easter with us on March 29th. I know that people are walking by going, those Mormons, do they not? Are they, it's very, very confusing. But to the Mormons who do not know, I don't think, had to call somebody in to explain what it is. They don't understand that Palm Sunday is a very different tradition, celebrates a very different thing, a very different kind of observance than is Easter Sunday. So they just don't know, and that's okay. So here's how they kind of got around it. I thought this was interesting. If you go to lds.org, let me scroll in here, they say, worship with us this Easter season. Easter is more than just one day, right? That's how they're getting around it. Easter is a feeling kind of all month long. It's not just one day. It's not the day that everybody else celebrates it. It's more than just one day, right? Join us every Sunday leading up to Easter, and then join us Easter Sunday for a worldwide broadcast of Christ-centered messages and music and the crowning of the LDS prophet. That is not Easter. That is not what any mainstream Christian would expect to see on Easter Sunday. But here it is. This is the message on the website. So Holy Week is coming up, and LDS people don't know what Holy Week is. They're trying really hard. Here is something in the Friend magazine that our friend Martine pointed out to me. It's called Mia's Holy Week, and it goes through from a child's point of view the kinds of things that her family is doing to celebrate Holy Week. They're picking up trash. That's like turning over the temple tables, right? They are taking an empty flower pot and putting a stone in front of it with a little Christ figure in it so that they can open it on Easter, this kind of thing. So this is great. They're trying to help the kids understand this tradition of Holy Week. What's interesting, though, is that the LDS version is a little bit different. They have something that I've seen called elsewhere Spirit World Saturday, because an LDS tradition, unlike other Christianity tradition, Jesus, went and did missionary work in the spirit world. I think in regular mainstream Christianity, he goes to hell to minister to the lost souls, something like that. But so in Mia's story, her parents went to the temple and she helped them print out temple cards. So they're just kind of taking the tradition and kind of making Holy Week their own. So they're trying. What do you guys think about Spirit World Saturday? I know Bill's just like, I can't say.
What I think is that I'll push back on this idea of picking up trash being the equivalent of overturning tables at the temple.
Taking care of your
do, Rebecca, what we do is overturning the tables at the temple.
Okay, you're right. That is true. Whew. That's it. Anyway, this is great. They're trying to learn about it, and they should be learning about it, but I don't think they should be learning about it from the LDS Church. They should look at the wider Christian traditions so they can understand. So here's another thing a lot of churches are doing. You can tell me in the comments if yours is doing this. It's an Easter walk. It's a Holy Week walk where you go to the stake center. They've set it up with different rooms representing different parts of the last week of Christ's life. And we've seen this all over the place. And this one right here actually has the nerve to call it the 15 stations of reflection, right? Well, there's something that's extremely specific and holy, in the rest of Christianity called the stations of the cross. They're extremely specific. But here the LDS Church has kind of taken them and made them their own and added some of their own. I thought this was, oh my gosh. So somebody asked the question about this, this banner. It was a Facebook post. What religion did this? Is this the neighborhood represented by different religions? The person's wondering, what is this? What's it from? Somebody writes back, oh, we did this as neighbors, but it's an LDS perspective. It goes beyond the resurrection to Christ visiting the Americas, right? So you tell me some Christian that's going to show up at the door there and walk through expecting to see the life of Christ, and they get to the Mesoamerica room. Yeah. What are they going to think then? That's what I'm saying. They're trying to do it, but they're doing it through the lens of Mormonism. Thoughts, Bill? You're shaking your head.
Well, I think you have to have a Heartland room too, since the church takes no position on the geography of where the Book of Mormon took place. Hence, you would have to have a Mesoamerica room and a Heartland room. And hence, I think, regardless of which room you go in, you will certainly be lost.
Yeah.
So is that why there's 15 instead of 14?
There are 14, and they have since added a 15th to be the resurrection. The stations of the cross are just the different points of his walk, the things that happened.
Is that 7? Were there 7 stations of the cross?
No, there's 14, 15 now, but there's 14. Okay. I'm just saying it's so interesting. We're even using that verbiage, but we're adding our own spin of the Meso/Heartland resurrection room, right? So all these things. Anyway, so here's something I thought. Another, I'll never forget, RFM, when you finally got what I was trying to say about General Conference, right? Because I kept talking about it. Yeah, and everyone was like, why is she so beating this drum of General Conference on Easter? But I think it's a place where they do it out loud. They choose Mormonism over what they're pretending to be, which are mainstream Christians. And they choose it. There it is. They're not budging. It's not even a question. So here's another thing that I had forgotten that also illustrates this. So here's a faithful post. The person says, I don't want to be irritated, but I am. My stake decided to have stake conference this weekend. That would be yesterday, instead of celebrating Palm Sunday. This means we don't get the opportunity to have a special Easter program for Palm Sunday or for Easter, right? There it is. And it reminded me that when they announced 1 hour Palm Sunday, they said, of course, unless a stake conference has already been scheduled. So they do not care about celebrating Easter if it runs into their previously scheduled conference, stake conference, their Mormon meetings. Easter is just going to have to wait. And this is all evidence of how little they really care about what Easter is and what it means for families to celebrate together. Let's see. I think I have one more slide here. Okay, so here's my question. Yes.
It's just another example, isn't it?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Of a tradition with no scriptural backing. I'm talking about when they schedule General Conference, which is always the first weekend that has the first Sunday, in it. Yep. It's governed by the Sunday. If April 1st were a Sunday, that would be General Conference weekend, is all I'm saying. Same with October. There's no reason for that. There's no basis for that.
No.
They could move that easily if they wanted to, but they refuse to because the tradition has become to them the equivalent of doctrine. And this is exactly what the church taught was apostasy 40 years ago when I joined the church. That the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches, their traditions had become their doctrines without any revelation behind them.
That's it. You said it exactly. This is why I keep talking about it, because I think it's just a place where it's pointed out so clearly. And my question now is, and we kind of touched on it before, now that the LDS version of Easter Sunday is over, and that's Palm Sunday, will they remove these banners from in front of the meeting houses, right? Will they remove them? Because if they do, they roll them up, they put them away, we're done with Easter. That shows it too, right? I've already had reports from somebody that has seen 2 banners being taken down. Easter's over for members of the LDS Church.
March
Easter
29th is past.
That's what I mean. Their leaders have told them that's when Easter was. So it's over, right? Now, people have mentioned leave the banners up because people can go into the church buildings and watch conference. Yeah, that's what you want to do when you dress up in your Easter clothes and take your kids somewhere. So I also, do you guys remember last year when President Oaks in his Easter message said, when you go to church on Easter Sunday, you should say he is risen, right? And the correct response from other congregants is to say he is risen back. Well, that wasn't correct. It is a very specific greeting where you're supposed to say he is risen indeed. I just wonder, what do you want to bet that he might try that at conference? Do you think he'll stand up there and say, when I say he's risen, everybody say he is risen back, because that's what the Christians do? I would love to see it. I don't think he's going to do it, but I thought it might be a nice Easter idea. We'll see.
Like aloha?
I like aloha. And my final slide just says this: a nice family dressed up for Easter, looking for a place to go. Mommy, can we go to this church today for Easter? And of course, Mommy says, it looks closed. It must not be a Christian church. If it's closed on Easter, we'll go somewhere else.
And there ain't no cross on that steeple.
There ain't no cross. So I don't know. I talk about this all the time, but now I'll be done. We'll have our Easter recap next Monday, and then no more Easter for another year, right?
Something to look forward to.
Yeah, thank you. I know. She will not shut up about Easter. I've actually had that commented on several of my shorts. So
We'll
I'm
always
sorry,
have
everybody.
pimples.
Exactly. Bill, any final thoughts on Easter? And then we'll just end it.
If anybody wants to go to an Easter service, find a church that does an Easter service.
Yeah.
Mormonism isn't it.
No.
Yep.
Now we've got another story about a
this is
BYU student and overly long braids, or are they?
Or are they? Yeah, this is my story, and I'll kind of paraphrase a lot of it. So this is a student at BYU. His name is Jaron First Charger, and he is a champion hoop and feather dancer. I watched some of his videos. He's a world champion. He's extremely skilled. He applied to BYU, and not only did they accept him as a student because he's a great student, they also recruited him into their Living Legends group, which is a performance group at BYU. Can you guys guess what Living Legends used to be called? I'm old enough to remember. Maybe you guys don't know because you joined when you were older.
The Chuck Norris Association?
No, I bet somebody in the chat will know. I had all the albums. I hope it's my next slide. Lamanite Generation.
Wait, you had the albums? You're the one who bought them?
It was just me. Yeah. Who out there remembers Go My Son, go and climb the ladder, right? Gosh, I must be the oldest person in the entire chat.
Does anybody out there remember Go My Son, Go and Climb the Ladder?
Yeah, Lamanite Generation. It was a group of Native Americans that they, LDS, that they put together, and they go touring around. They put out songs, and they celebrated this culture, because back in my day, they were the Lamanites, right? Until they weren't. So they've now changed the name to Living Legends. But the point is, this young man was recruited. Here's a picture on the right of what they are now, all different, nationalities and cultural dances that they've, oh, good. Someone in the chat says that they sang it all the time. Thank you, Deanne. Somebody's validating me. So, those albums bring back memories. Anyway, so this young man recruited to BYU, and he told them, during his admissions process, he talked to several different people. He said, look, I've got braids. They are indigenous braids. They are traditional, and they're extremely important to me. They have incredible significance. And, I'm this dancer. This is what I wear. This is how I dress. And I think he maybe assumed I'm going to be part of Living Legends. Of course, they want me to look, like myself, right? Wrong. That is not the case. So this actually made national news. I've seen it picked up several different places. Here's a picture of Jaron. He also is an excellent guitar player. There's his hair down. He does not ever wear it that way at BYU. He wears it with the braids neatly combed, tightly pulled back, just like he does when he's dancing. And BYU said to him about the first week in, you're going to have to cut those. You're going to have to cut those or you're going to get expelled. Even after all the assurances that he got. He wrote letters, his parents wrote letters, his tribal leaders wrote letters trying to explain the significance of these braids. It's not an honor code thing. This is not it, not to mention the assurances that he had gotten. I pulled together some other students you may remember from BYU Hawaii. This student here had to petition and sue to be able to keep his traditional hair. This one in the middle is from Ecuador, same kind of thing. They're asking for an exception because their hair means something to them. Please respect my traditions. BYU, no, we won't. You're out, right? So finally, yeah, exactly. I made this great picture of somebody about to get their haircut. So the actual policy at BYU on the honor code, it used to say trimmed short. It doesn't say that anymore. It just says neat and clean in appearance. Well, this is exactly what Jaron's hair is. It's 2 long braids, neat and clean in appearance, right? So he has a lawyer, and the lawyer wrote letters. Everybody wrote letters. They said, we're going to have to do something because he's not cutting his hair. This is not what he's going to do. They said, you cut it or you're expelled. The lawyer said, we have just filed a federal lawsuit. And what do you think the church did? Any guesses?
Well, I peeked.
I know you did. 4 days later, oh, no, we didn't really mean that. No, that's totally, no, you can keep him. You can keep him. The only thing that works is international exposure and sort of shaming an institution for what they're doing. So they are now going to allow him to keep his braids. He's going to be able to keep his spot in Living Legends because they were threatening, of course, to expel him and kick him off the team. And only after the threat of lawsuit have they decided, okay, that's probably a really bad look, and we're going to let him keep his traditional braids. But I just think it's absolutely fascinating that for an institution that insists that everybody respect them and their traditions, to the point when you go into temple building, respect us. We can build what we want. It's our religious significance. It's our steeple. You must let us have it the way we want. When it comes to somebody else and their traditions, they very easily just kind of throw that out the window and don't even really try to understand. So I'm glad that this worked out for this young man. And the article went on to talk about, how often at BYU Indigenous voices, Native voices are not heard. And, they really have to try hard to make themselves heard on campus. So it was interesting. Had you guys seen this article all? Or like I said, it was getting some international, because it's a pretty provocative story. Only after, the threat of a lawsuit or actually filing the lawsuit did they come to their senses and say you can stay. Any thoughts on that, Bill? Oops, muted.
Even to get it to go that far,
Yeah.
you have to hire a lawyer. The
Yep.
lawyer has to spend that much time on it. Sounds like it wasn't just a simple letter and then there's the fix. It was having to file the lawsuit. The cost, the time, the energy, when the church could just use common sense and go, anybody who's coming into this school with some sort of real sacred history, tradition, ought to just respect that and not force people to go through all of this and jump this many hoops to get this done.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Pardon the pun. Hoops. Okay. So anyway, yeah, thank you for that story, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Great reporting on your part. So while they're busy trying to increase the amount of Mormon-themed classes that BYU students have to take to graduate, they're going at them early in Utah. As early as 3rd grade, Utah students will need to study Bible passages in social studies lessons under a new law. Carmen Nesbitt, March 30th. Utah students will be required to analyze specific Bible passages referenced or alluded to in U.S. historical documents as part of the state's sweeping new social studies curriculum. That's under House Bill 312, titled School Curriculum and Standards Modifications, which Governor Spencer Cox signed into law last week. This is a done deal, folks, except maybe for the courts, but we'll see how it is implemented. That's where the rubber will hit the road. Exactly which passages would need to be studied has yet to be determined, but the Utah State Board of Education has until the 2028-29 school year to decide. The measure directs public schools to incorporate the Bible as a historical, excuse me for a second. Hang on a second. A historical, I'll just continue reading. It's just the specific passages from the text that allude to founding documents. Wadsworth said, okay, this is the promoter of the bill. She added the bill explicitly prohibits teaching theology or doctrine, and that religious concepts must be discussed in a historical context that have a documented influence on American civic thought. So she's saying all the right words. That includes reference to nature's God, creator, supreme judge of the world, and divine providence in the Declaration of Independence, according to the bill's language. It allows for other religious concepts that appear in historical documents to be explored too, though that would not be required. The bill's sponsor, Representative Tiara Auxier, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Republican of Morgan, said it gives the state the power to create its own civics education rooted in Utah values. If we want control on what our students are being able to learn and being taught, we want to not have to be getting our textbooks from California, Auxier said at a March 5th House hearing on the bill. Students in grades 3 through 12 are subject to the standards. 3 through 12. That all means educators will be teaching pieces of the Bible, but not the Bible as a whole, said Jennifer Wadsworth. She's a policy advisor with the Utah Utah School Board, I think is what that is. USBE, Board of Education. Let me go back to that one thing. Seems a bit out of place, but I want to cover it as well. Exactly which passages would need to be studied has yet to be determined, but the Utah State Board of Education, I think I did read that. I'll continue. In 1963, the Supreme Court ruled that while public schools cannot sponsor Bible readings and recitations of the Lord's Prayer, the Bible may be taught as a historical and literary text. So that's the state of the law constitutionally in these United States. The Bible is worthy of study for its literary and historic qualities, the ruling states. Nothing we have said here, this is still the U.S. Supreme Court, 63, nothing we have said here indicates that such study of the Bible or of religion, when presented objectively as part of a secular program of education, may not be effected consistently with the First Amendment. Clifford Roski, a law professor at the University of Utah, said the bill doesn't violate the First Amendment. Does not, at least not on paper. Developing that curriculum will cost taxpayers roughly $12 million, according to the bill's fiscal note. Auxier did not respond to the Salt Lake Tribune's request for comments. This is a picture they took of Tiara Auxier, and shame on you, Trent Nelson, for using the worst possible picture you could have taken of this woman. Okay, here's the one I was looking for, I think. It's very clear that the bill was carefully drafted by people, at least I hope that's the worst picture he could get ever. It's very clear that the bill was carefully drafted by people who are aware of the Supreme Court precedents in this area, Roski said. That's the law professor at the U of U. And here is the mic drop statement of the entire article. It's written to maximize the amount of teaching about religion while not requiring or permitting the teaching of religion. I want to say that once again. It's written to maximize the amount of teaching about religion while not requiring or permitting the teaching of religion. In practice, though, the bill could infringe on students' and teachers' constitutional rights, he said. They're now asking Utah public school teachers to stand up in front of their class, even third graders, and say, this is what the Bible says. And here are all the different things that people think it means, Roski said. I would think that that's going to create a lot of division in the community. Yeah, I think so too. Roski noted that it's unusual to require regular social studies instruction in elementary grades, as many of the concepts are relatively advanced. I don't think I had social studies in elementary school. I think that was junior high. But they're trying to horn the Bible in under the false flag of social studies as early as third grade. It's old language, 200-year-old language, he said, referring to U.S. founding documents, and older than that if you're going to talk about the Bible. Little kids have trouble understanding it. Yeah, I think they would. What do you think about this, Bill? What's going on here?
Yeah, I think anytime you start mixing religion in the public school system, and again, maybe they're leaving room there. It sounds like, hey, here's parts of the Bible. Lots of people understand it in different ways. Okay. but all it takes is a zealous Latter-day Saint teacher in a school to impose it a certain way towards all the students. I really think the whole separation of religion and government, the whole private and public sector of that should all just stay distant from each other. And I think there's just way too much room for misuse. And then I always think it's strange when the Satanists come along and they want to put their thing in or have their book read. It's always a no-no. So I don't know.
Oh no, it's always a yes. That's the problem. Those Satanists are always ruining the fun for everybody.
Yeah.
What do you think, Rebecca? Ha 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 ha.
We've all done it now, each one of us. I was going to say, I
haven't.
think the Satanic Temple. Oh, that's right. You haven't. Only Bill and I.
Yeah.
The Satanic Temple makes good points wherever it goes. And I did notice a post by our friend Jackson Washburn that he had spent some time there. I don't know if it was an old post or not. But my thought is, what Bible? Which Bible are you?
Wait, hang a second. Jackson Washburn had spent some time at the Satanic Temple.
Visited. Like, he visits all denominations, all religions. And I happened to see a post where he went there. And I thought, because I'm always intrigued by what they're doing. It's fascinating and very greatly needed, to counter this kind of thing. So, and I do have to ask, what Bible? Right? A Bible, which one? There's all kinds of different Bibles. Will it be the JST? They're going to say different things, right? What kind of a Bible? I also find it ironic that Utah bans books so ferociously, that they're so open and welcoming to the Bible, which is extremely violent and sexual and has a lot of themes that are not very good for little kids. I also question, will parents be allowed to opt out? Will there be a permission slip?
There is. There is.
Okay, so that's part of it too. But then you're that kid that has to go out. But then part of me says, you know what? If you do have a teacher standing up there and saying, here's the Bible and here's what all kinds of different people think it means, for the LDS kid, maybe they'll go, wait, there's different ways of thinking. People think different things about the Bible. Maybe it'll lead to a little bit of cognitive dissonance. I don't know. But overall, of course, it's Utah. And of course, it's a theocracy. For people that say it's not, practically every week on the newscast, we talk about something that indicates, yes, it is.
I think if we can get those third graders reading the Bible, they won't leave the church. What do you think, Bill?
Say that again. If the third graders what?
If we can get those third graders reading the Bible, then they won't leave the church. Because that's the whole point of it, right?
I'll just say that you're being funny, but I'll just say there was a suggestion once that you do present all the religions of the world. You teach people all the various aspects of each of them. And what ends up happening then is that people go like, oh, like these are all just made up stories. And so I'm all for that. And there have been lots of groups that are not religious who have suggested doing that. But generally when systems want religion in school, they want their religion in the school.
Yeah. And that was my comment. Yeah. If they really do read it with a complete impartiality, to show them that there are all kinds of different interpretations. Exactly what you said, Bill. That is a way to present a child with tools to critically think about everything. Take them to every church, and eventually even the youngest will go, wow, they all think they're right, don't they? It really works. So maybe it can be positive, but I doubt the way it's implemented that it would be in this context.
Very good. Well, now we have a story about the Salt Lake Temple and some new statuary.
We have some temple news because I haven't done it for a while. So I have about 4 quick stories just to catch us up. This is the biggest story about the Salt Lake City Temple. Did you ever think you would live to see the day where there was a cross and Gethsemane in front of the temple? Now, we did cover this in September on the newscast because I found out that they were working on this statue. It was set up kind of over on the side. It was kind of covered up. So we did let people know this was going to happen. But now it's moved into a prominent position just in time for Easter week, Holy Week. And there it is. Any thoughts on just that imagery right there in your face?
I got to ask you, did they paint the temple or something, or is it just the sunlight? Because it looks a lot brighter than it used to.
Yeah, the limestone has been, kind of upgraded, kind of beefed up. Yeah, for sure. They're having millions of people coming. Didn't you follow my story last week, RFM?
I kind of like the gray.
Yeah.
What do you think, Bill?
Pioneer gray.
I want to know what's happening in that second photo. What is that?
That's the Garden of Gethsemane. He's suffering.
He bled, as it were, drops of sweat, like drops of blood. I just wish someone would help him a little sooner carry that cross. That's got to be heavy.
Well,
Simon of Cyrene did, and maybe this is Simon.
Eventually,
somebody,
It's a
Did you
heavy
notice how they work that? I'm sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
it's a heavy cross to bear.
It is. I was going to ask Rebecca if
But
she noticed how they worked Simon of Cyrene into Ben-Hur.
Oh, yes, they did. That's right. Because
Because Jesus
Ben-Hur.
falls down. He can't carry his cross anymore.
Right.
So they have some other guy come in there and carry it for him.
Right.
And Jesus
And
sort of
then-
walks along behind.
Right. And Ben-Hur gives them water, which is, the bookends of the, anyway, enough.
And
But
Jesus
I will
heals
say,
the 2 leper women because
Exactly.
it just seemed like the right thing to do.
it did. Valley
All
of
the other lepers, screw them.
Screw them. But your family members. But they will never, I believe, have him hanging on the cross on Temple Square. I think this is as far as they're going to go, that they're going to show this imagery here of carrying the cross, because you cannot say you're mainstream Christian and not have some kind of shout out to the cross. Now, they do have 2 buildings on Temple Square that have the cross layout, and from above you can really see the cross. So anyway, that's there. I encourage everybody to go look at it and say, I freaking can't believe this, honestly.
Look, I'm no art critic, okay?
Yeah.
But there's something about having statuary or a figure or a representation of the Garden of Gethsemane, which of course is at night,
Yes.
being displayed in the
Yeah.
bright Utah daylight. That
Yeah.
is jarring to me.
It is. It's disturbing, and I would say frightening for kids. It's hard to explain what this is. It doesn't even really, I don't think, look like Jesus. Like if I saw this somewhere independently from
Yeah.
a religious context or Temple Square, I would not say, oh yeah, that's obviously the Garden of Gethsemane. So yeah, it is kind of a scary statue. So, and I'm going to go see it up close just to check it out. So anyway, again, we've talked about the cross a lot. One of my friends, Ron Jorgensen, fantastic researcher. He's so good. He found this awesome quote by our favorite Bruce R. McConkie. And I just want to reiterate to everybody, it's not just people of my age when they were growing up were told, we just don't so much do the cross. It wasn't that. There was a cross about the cross. We abhorred the cross. We shunned the cross. We stayed away from the cross. It had an
We were like
evil
vampires.
component. Yes, it had an evil component to it. We did not do it. It was apostasy. It was Catholic. It was horror of the earth. It wasn't just casual. It was what made my mom rip the cross necklace that my boyfriend had given me off my neck. It was, we do not do it. And now I know why. Bruce R. McConkie said that the mark of the beast is the cross. There it is right there. So yeah, it's not just casual. And it explains why a lot of us of a certain age are like, what do you mean there's a cross on Temple Square? And I had to make this meme. At a cemetery, the woman says, what's that sound? And the guy says, that's just deceased LDS members and leaders rolling over in their graves. Happens a lot lately. And I think it does. The changes are happening so quickly. And again, just a little disclaimer would help. So anyway, new statuary, there it is. I predict this. This is Virgin Mary. I made this AI. I predict this is going to be in the future. It's got to be at Temple Square. And that's what it would look like.
Oh, that is not even a real statue.
Oh, no. That's AI. I said it clearly up front, but I predict this is where we're heading. Virgin Mary at Temple Square. I think so. So
I had seen the slide before and thought it was real.
Oh, no, I will make it clear. These are real.
Mm-hmm.
This is in the style of the first slides. And it's just
That's remarkable how realistic that looks.
I think this is better maybe than the other 2. I don't know. Anyway, the other things that happen in a little follow-up, we talked about road closures at Temple Square for all of this huge 6-month event of the open house. Yes, it passed. They are going to close all the roads, the businesses be damned. You're just going to have to find your way somehow to your office because everything's going to be closed. That did pass. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Also, if you would like to attend, which I think a lot of you do, I do. And you know my reasoning, I want to see what they've done to the inside of the temple and I want to, cry a little bit. And yeah, you're going to go on an app and you're going to get a ticket. It's a ticketed event and late this summer. And we'll let you guys know when there's going to be an app and you can get your tickets. So that is all the news for the Salt Lake Temple. Any comments on that? Or we'll move on to our next temple.
We should do a Sunstone tour or something.
Oh my gosh.
It'll happen during Sunstone. So maybe Lindsay should put together a giant group of us walking through and getting to see the inside of that.
I love that idea. I think that would be fantastic. No, let's try to put something like that together. But again, it is April to October next year, 6 months long, and they're expecting everyone in the entire world to come. Next temple, Vienna, Austria, LDS temple. The church put out some renderings of some different temples. Do you notice anything, Bill or RFM, about the Vienna, Austria LDS temple that
It
might
looks
kind
like
of
every
raise your
other temple.
eyebrow? What?
It looks like every other temple I've seen.
Does it though? Does it? Yeah, I had this picture sent to me by pretty much every person I've worked with in every temple building town. I'm talking Fairview,
Mm-hmm.
Cody,
Mm-hmm.
Bakersfield, Heber, Lone Mountain. And they all said the same thing to me. What the hell? What about the steeple doctrine? We want this temple, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is no steeple. There's not even a little tiny steeplet on top. There's absolutely nothing. It's absolutely flat. I'm sure it's the zoning, it's the regulations. There's no arlupa. Also, a possibility I came up with, elderly people at the temple, maybe they need a quick access helipad. I thought that might be it. But I will say they really have a lot of nerve given what the things that they said to these temple building towns. Jesus wants us this way. Jesus has to have the steeple. We can't worship without the steeple. It's our God-given right. So they're just scratching their head that this new design has absolutely no steeple. Any thoughts on Vienna?
Yeah, the word I'd use to describe that temple is impotent. It looks impotent to
It looks
me.
impotent.
But the other thing is that I had put this up on my Facebook page, and some TBM, I believe it must have been, was taking issue with this because saying, well, temple steeples aren't allowed with the zoning in
Yeah.
Austria or Vienna,
Well,
Austria, right? And
yeah.
I'm just thinking, okay, so I don't think you're getting the point here, which is that if they're not necessary in Vienna, why are they necessary in Fairview?
Right. And 60
Regardless of
foot,
zoning.
exactly. And 60-foot steeples are allowed in Fairview. So go ahead and follow that zoning, right? Don't try to jack it up to 173 feet. Yeah, these people are insulted and they just really can't believe it because they've heard it. They've all heard it. So
It looks like a mausoleum, sort of. What do you think, Bill?
I think what you're saying, RFM, is where there are laws that you can't work around,
Mhm.
God is perfectly okay with no steeple.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where there are laws that you can work around, God wants his steeple very big.
Yeah.
Where there are laws that you can work around, but for which the town is going to fight you, you're willing to come up with a medium-sized steeple.
It is the Church of Dallas Oak of Latter-day Lawyers.
I was going to say, Heavenly Father he's flexible sometimes.
He's flexible. But I will tell you, and I have it recorded how many times the lawyer said, well, Jesus wants it this way here. Because they would ask, why can't we have your Belinda? Why can't we have short? Jesus wants this steeple, Jack to Jesus, here, right? So yeah, it kind of makes them almost a laughing stock because everyone else is like, yeah, it's
Mhm.
just ridiculous.
It lets them know that what Nemo flew over from Jolly Old to tell the good people at Fairview was true.
Yeah.
It was all bullocks.
That's it.
It was
That's
all
it
a big
exactly.
lie. There
Yeah.
is no steeple doctrine. There never has been in the Mormon Church. And
Yep.
they were putting one over on the Fairview City Council and the citizens of Fairview. And shame on you, Mormon Church, for doing that. And all of you other Mormons who went along with it.
Yep.
There was
But
only
you know
one guy
what?
other than Nemo that I heard in any of those meetings who was a member of the church and said,
Yes.
look, I got to be honest with you. There's no steeple doctrine.
Yep. And there were more. I was going to say that eventually even the members were like, oh, come on. Now this is not, and I would get letters from those people, the mayor and counselors would get letters saying, I'm an active member and I'm here to tell you they're not telling you the truth about this. So it really did push some people, over the edge. And we always tell temple building towns that we work with, there are two things that will possibly work. And that is public embarrassment, church sues small town of Cody, Wyoming, things like that work. And also your own members finally kind of being disgusted by what you're trying to pull over and their integrity takes over and they say, this is not right. And I have to let you guys know. So anyway, Vienna, it'll be interesting to watch that. This is Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, just very quickly. The city council passed it, but I don't even have to read this. You guys can say this verbatim. The lighting, it's too bright. You guys need to make it, less bright. We're going to pass it contingent on the fact that you take the lights down. So we'll be watching this again. It's not that big of a temple, but again, the lighting, and the council talks about going other places and seeing other temples. And very nicely, they try to say, this is ass bright.
Mm-hmm.
They
It
don't
even
say it
looks
in those
like a
words.
lighthouse.
It does. It does. So we'll keep watching Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So, but I was surprised Idaho, that's something. This is another interesting one that kind of slipped through and I kind of caught it. Charlottesville, North Carolina temple. In 2023, it was announced and a location was announced. There it is. It's going to be built. There's an old historic home there, kind of old, moldy. It's not on the historic register, but it was built in 1901. I guess it was a beloved historic site at one time. The church tears down the house. There's a picture in the middle of the house, and then below it, it's torn down. And then suddenly Jesus changes his mind because just a week ago, there's a new location for the Charlotte, North Carolina temple. No explanation about the other one, what happened, why the house was torn down, why it was changed. I think there might be some real estate opportunity having to do with the new site. If anybody knows, I would love to know more about what's happening in North Carolina. Somebody, when I posted this, said, God just really hated that house. He just had to get rid of that house. So, but again, it just shows the arbitrary nature. If the location can be changed like that, why couldn't the location be changed in Fairview or Lone Mountain or, any number of places? It just makes people scratch their heads. So I thought
it makes one wonder about how compos mentis God is, because we're going to build the temple here. Nah, forget it. We'll tear down the house. Nah, we're going to build it over here instead.
Exactly. But at the same time, the lawyers are saying to these people, it cannot be moved because God has ordained it here, right? It will not be moved. And yet here, tear down a house and move it over here. So it doesn't make much sense. Any thoughts on that, Bill? And I think
Mormons have a long history of saying things cannot be moved and moving them. Sorry, Bill, go ahead.
I don't think the church is going to be that upset. Now they have even more property. They have both the Howard family home property and the future grounds for the temple. And this is not a church that is bothered by having too much property.
I think you're right. Nope. It's a win-win. But I would like to know if anyone out there knows anything about why the location was moved, because there's always an interesting story when a location is moved. And so if anyone knows, please message me.
Please do that. By the way, just to make it clear, I'm talking about Zion, for crying out loud. The city of Zion. God said over and over in the Doctrine and Covenants, which is scripture to Mormons, that Zion will not be moved. And sure enough, it has been.
That's true. All right. One last temple, and that is the Linden, Utah temple. I've been watching and reporting on this temple since it first started. And remember, it was done and lit up every night, but nothing was happening in it for almost a year. There was all kinds of theories behind the scenes about a problem with construction in the interior or not being able to staff it, but it's up, it's running. There's an open house. The picture on the left, they actually, back to Palm Sunday, had a Palm Sunday walk to the Linden Temple. Apparently, this is a tradition. 1,000 people showed up to walk with their palm fronds to the Linden Temple, which is right in the middle of its open house.
A tradition?
Yes, there's a tradition started by Brent Met. Who? Oh my gosh, I can't think of somebody. An apologist started this tradition. He and his family walked.
But the Linden Temple is new, right?
Yeah, it's brand new. It's in its open house phase right now. Yeah.
Okay, was this a tradition with a different temple?
No, it's a tradition to take a walk and to go, up toward the site. The site's been here and ready to go for years, of course, and the construction has been about 4 or 5 years. So it's been in the making for a while. But anyway, it's interesting because typically in an open house, you can go online and request a time slot, get a ticket. But I heard from somebody in the know who said they didn't do that with this temple, which is why there's a lot of traffic. That post in the middle is like, oh my gosh, the neighborhood, the traffic, be careful. It's absolutely a madhouse. But I was told that there are no pre-scheduled time slots because the anti-Mormons have been known to fill up all the slots and create chaos. So, and there was mention of a Baptist church that was doing this. Yeah.
Well, you can't trust those Baptists.
No, I don't think so at all. But the most interesting thing to me about this temple, and this is a follow-up to one of your stories over the last couple of weeks, RFM, and somebody posted this. I had to do some due diligence to see if this was accurate. Parker Kingston, the former BYU wide receiver, apparently in this picture, in this post, was attending the Linden open house. He did have his ankle bracelet removed. Remember, you reported on that last week, RFM? And people were like, oh, how do we know that's the temple? Goodness, excited by this story. Shh. I had some of our friends go to the temple and find this spot, and it is indeed the Linden Temple. So that does mean he was there. And one of the lovely girls in the picture is his fiance. So
it's one in the solid white dress in front, right?
No. Oh,
Which
in the
one?
very center. Yeah, I think it's the shorter one. But anyway,
Oh,
interesting, huh? I thought that was kind of interesting that, whatever that says, attending the
you
temple
can
open
you
house.
can
So,
tell Parker Kingston because he's the only one there without a happy face.
well, I wanted to make sure that I kept the anonymity and privacy of everybody else. So, those are all my temple updates. I think we are caught up now, and I think that's the end of everything I have to say for my story. Back to you, RFM.
Okay, so on the radar, now back to you, Rebecca,
Oh my
because
gosh.
next up
Back
is
and
going to be
forth.
Tuesday, which is tomorrow night in Mormonish.
It's true. Mormonish is always Tuesday night at 6 p.m. We have a really fun one. Sometimes when the Good Book Club, the other organization that I run, reads a really amazing book and has an incredible discussion, we will bring the presenter and maybe somebody who's a really awesome member of the book club, our friend Cameron here, and presenter Steph. We're going to talk about the new psychology of happiness, the 10 worlds theory. This is rooted in Buddhism. This was a fascinating conversation. You guys are really going to want to catch this for sure. It's absolutely very interesting. And this is going to be Tuesday night, tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Okay, really good. Well, we've announced
Oh,
it twice. I'm sorry,
God.
what?
I said, isn't this a repeat of last week? I saw the same slide. I thought maybe you hadn't switched it.
You want to announce this, Bill, now that Rebecca shamed me
I
into silence?
didn't shame anybody. No, it'll be fun when this comes out.
It's your episode.
I know. Well, hopefully this is going to work. I'm just going to put it up there and say it's going to be Wednesday. Tune in and see if it happens, okay? If it does, it's going to be amazing. But we still got a hard deadline to hit. All right? And so we'll see. You bet.
All right. Well, this is the next one in my series. By the way, when you and I did the session at Thrive, we talked about the translation of the Book of Mormon. I had a section on 116 pages, and you made an observation as we were preparing for that D&C section 10, it holds Joseph Smith to a tight translation as it explains the loss of the 116 pages. We talk about a little bit about D&C 10 in this, but we go into a lot of other areas, including, I think, Blake Ostler's expansion theory. You'll notice there's Nephi and his brother Jacob. They're looking at the late war and using that to write down things for the plates. But this is the next episode in the series that I'm doing, tight translation versus loose translation. And this will come out Thursday morning next week. So there's that one.
Okay, great. Sounds fascinating. Mormonism After Dark with Radio Free Mormon, Sans Bill Reel, will be coming around again Friday night. We're in a state of flux. We got a lot of people who love the show and come there for fellowship, if I can use that word. Friendship, how about that? Community, how about that for a word? And to hang out after a long week and share community, share stories, share each other's company mainly, and have a good time. So that's at 8:00 p.m. Mountain Time. That's the night before freaking General Conference. Yeah, it's coming up again, looming like a thundercloud on the horizon. General Conference, and I'll be here for every session of it. And that's why I'm specifically mad that they won't move it from Easter, because they're screwing up my Easter too. Isn't it enough just to screw up the Mormons' Easter without screwing up the ex-Mormons' Easter, guys? But I'll be here and I'll be reporting on things. The only blessing is that they finally got rid of that Saturday night session that had been limping along for the last several years. And now they just finally put it out of its misery. So I'll at least have Saturday evening free once they get done reporting on. By the way, if anybody doesn't know, what happens is RFM, I watch each session of General Conference live, taking copious notes as it's going on. As it's over, boom, I go live and I report on what happened, hopefully in a more entertaining way than they did, and usually in a shorter way than they did, to give you the down and the dirty on what happened in General Conference. And I do that for each of the sessions, all 4 of them now. It used to be 5, but all 4 of them. And I'll be here at the end of each session to go live and tell you about what happened during those sessions of General Conference, what was important, at least from my point of view, and what it all means. So I'm really looking forward to that, he said insincerely. But I know that a lot of people really, really like this. So I'm there for you. I suffer for my art, and we'll have a great time anyway. Oh, this happened. Yeah, this was the last RFM with, who is this, Rebecca? Do you know who that is?
That is Dr. John Lundwall. I just had dinner
Wrong.
with him after Ben-Hur, and we talked about you the entire time.
That's Indiana Jones.
That's right.
Yeah. So Indiana Jones, I did this slide because when I look at John Lundwall, I see Indiana Jones. He's like a guy who's lived his life in homage to Indiana Jones. So I thought I would use Indiana Jones as an homage to him. It's Mormon Temple is Treasure Quest. It covers two things, one of which is his emergent theory about the Book of Mormon, which you talked about on your show, Mormonish Rebecca.
Yeah.
About how he sees elements of the grimoire that was available and probably used by Joseph Smith. I mean, he was up to his eyeballs in magic and ceremonial magic, as Dr. Lundwall corrects me, not folk magic. So it would make sense. And there's some similarities between that and the Book of Mormon. There's also some real similarities between this whole ceremonial magic thing and the temple endowment, which I go over during like the last half hour of the episode. So there is that. And that's it, I think. That is all the slides. All the news.
Read
What is
some
it,
breaking
Rebecca?
news? Can I read some breaking news that has to do with something we covered last week?
Yeah.
I knew this would happen. Okay.
What?
They're reducing the time of Sunday school.
Are you kidding?
I'm not kidding. I can't quite understand what they're saying, but I'm just going to read it because we're about breaking news. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced changes to its class meeting schedule. Starting in September 6th, there will be a shorter Sunday school, Relief Society, Elders Quorum, Young Women, and Aaronic Priesthood meetings. They will be held for 25 minutes, moving back to 3 blocks each Sunday. Primary will be 55 minutes, and sacrament meeting will continue to be 60 minutes. Didn't we make that joke that they would just sort of phase Sunday school out once they made women Sunday school presidents? You can't make this stuff up.
Does that mean it's an hour and a half now?
I think what they mean is instead of class time, they're going to focus more on group time, like meet together, because it says they're going to be studying the For Strength of Youth pamphlet as the curriculum and some other supporting content. So I think maybe they're realizing that they need to meet together, but the actual individual, can you imagine Relief Society for 25 minutes? I'm not sure what they're talking about. Everybody needs to go look it up. But I just thought that was funny that Sunday school will now be shorter. And we literally predicted that last week.
Hey, Bill, since this is late breaking, are you able to make that a little bit bigger so we can
it's on
read
the
this
church
article from the
newsroom.
Deseret News?
Yeah, and I'm reading it'll be the same 2 hours. They're just kind of, I think, just arranging it in a different way. Yeah, boy, my phone is blowing up. Everybody's sending it to me. So
Well, let's go ahead. Hey, Rebecca,
Yes.
since you got this tip, you want to read this?
You want me to read that? Let's see. Can I read it? No, somebody
you
else better
want.
read it. It's too small. Bill, you read it. I just read what I had. So if you want to find it on the
How
church
about now?
newsroom site.
How about now, Rebecca?
Yes, leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced on Monday.
Oop, let me get me do that again. Sorry, I was trying to make it bigger yet.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Announced on Monday adjustments to the organization's schedule for Sunday worship services to support members in their efforts to be lifelong disciples of Jesus Christ. Beginning September 6th, the Sunday school schedule throughout the church will include a 60-minute sacrament meeting. Okay, we've got that. Or the Sunday schedule, followed by a 5-minute transition and a 25-minute Sunday school class. Following a second 5-minute transitions, members will conclude Sunday services with meetings for Priesthood Quorum, Relief Society, and Young Women. Yeah, this is what I thought. The primary schedule for children will not change. So I think they're realizing that they need to keep them together in a bigger group setting, and then they go off to their individual class for less time.
Well,
Go
Rebecca,
ahead. Yes.
is this not a change? I mean, isn't it now that the 2 hours it's always sacrament, but haven't they been taking Relief Society and priesthood and alternating it with Sunday school?
Yeah.
Every other week?
Again, I'm
Now
not
they're putting them all
exactly
together
sure.
again, but keeping the same 2 hours, right?
Yeah, it's still the same 2 hours. We're going to have to look at this. The adjustments
Don't
will
you think
strengthen. Go ahead.
by them doing, instead of sacrament and then an hour Relief Society priesthood, come back the next week, an hour of Sunday school.
Yeah.
Now you're going to do 25 minutes of each every Sunday.
Right.
Would you actually get way less from it?
Yes.
You can't even begin to get started in 25 minutes.
Nope.
One suspects that's the whole point.
I think it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they feel they're losing touch with people and they need to, even for a short period of time, make it more consistent. But we'll have to look and see what this looks like on
And Bill
paper.
and Rebecca, can I ask you this too? Isn't 60 minutes for sacrament meeting a reduction in time?
It
Yeah,
was an hour and 10 minutes or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
it used to be 70 minutes.
By the way, I think it's the opposite, Rebecca. I think they want to create distance.
Yeah.
You are leaving everyone less time to get into the deep of anything. That is on purpose.
Right. Yeah. And so some of my friends are helping me understand it. But yeah, it basically is it's back to every week, but just a short period of time.
Hmm.
So touching base. And it's interesting because I saw again another, they're always talking about the 1 hour church, and that literally would be just announcements in sacrament, and then moving on to this, more time here. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's going to be
I will
interesting.
also observe that there's no such thing as a 5-minute transition in church.
Oh, no. Well, that's what the Sunday school president is for, to whip you back into shape and get you into that class. But especially for kids, I mean, I was still in primary when they first implemented that for a little while, and it was just a whirlwind. The kids were barely there, and then they were there, and there just was not enough time to accomplish anything. And I kind of feel like this will be that again. Just real quick, get in, say you did it. I don't
It
know.
seems like the most inefficient way of doing things.
It really does. And we'll take a look at it, everybody, and we'll have maybe a little bit of a more in-depth analysis next time when we kind of understand what their motivations might be or what they're doing. But I just thought that was interesting. My phone was like, beep, beep, beep. I'm like, what is everybody talking about? And, we are a news program, so we do have to give breaking news every once in a while. So
Absolutely. We read the whole article. Thank you for
Yeah,
bringing it to our
that was
attention,
it.
Rebecca.
Yeah, well, thank Martine. She's the one that was really blowing up my phone. She's so good. I hope everybody knows that for all of us that are the forward face of the news here, we have
Mhm.
so many people behind us that send us, information and screenshots. And, thank you, everybody. You guys are awesome. It's a crowdsourced effort.
I think there's another option, by the way. The other option, I think, is that they actually want to go back to the way things were.
Mhm.
And if you immediately did that after Nelson's death, it would look like you just reversed what he did. So now
that's
you go back to splitting them again. So you do everything on a Sunday, let a few years of that go by, and now you add back in the 25 minutes to each, and you go back to 3-hour church.
The
It's like
people will
boiling
never
a lobster.
stand for it. The Mormons will never stand for it.
Yeah.
There will be revolts in the street.
Well, I also feel maybe some people miss, you know what I mean? It's not my week. I'm a relief study teacher. I'm going to go, drink some tea in my backyard. It really could be that you feel you only have to go every other Sunday, and they can't have that. You have to have a responsibility there every Sunday to keep you locked in.
And that might be factored into it too. That's a great insight, Rebecca.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more next time. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought it was important.
I'm looking forward to more temples next time. That's all I can say. No, really. We love the temples. Everybody, Martine, thank you so much. I talked to you earlier today. It was great talking to you too. And thanks for the update on the breaking news with the Mormons making church less relevant every day. Thanks for joining us tonight. Please hit like, please hit subscribe. Please, if you're watching this on Mormonish, go to Mormon Discussions, hit like and subscribe there. If you're watching this on Mormon Discussions, please go to Mormonish and hit like and subscribe there. We do live stream on both channels. So thank you so much for watching. Again, please join us next Monday at 6 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time for another episode of the Mormon Newscast. Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.